But the story that has, I think, surprised a lot of people doesn't surprise me. And it's that Adrian Wojnarowski, Woj, has reported earlier today that with the exception of James Harden, you can have anything you want here if you want to call the Rockets. Now, some of this comes from the fact that the Rockets have a couple of ridiculous contracts, right? Like the Chris Paul contract feels like the Albert Pujols contract. It doesn't take away from the fact he's a great player, but based upon his body, it's broken down the past, the position, it's one of speed and elusiveness, and your eyes just tell you that he is aging. And even when healthy this year, he wasn't getting a step nearly as well as he used to, and that's not going to get better, that's going to get worse. Then you got Clint Capella, who they felt compelled to have to give a big contract to keep, but Clint Capella is such a poor free throw shooter and such kind of a zero offensively unless he's a pick and roll guy that you can't have him on the floor at the end of a game. And you can't be the third highest paid player on the team if you have to be on the bench in the most important time. It's not the way it works. And then the rest of the pieces are kind of thrown together. Would you like a PJ Tucker? Sure. You got to take a Chris Paul contract with you. So this story to me is a lot like, well, the Baxter Holmes story yesterday, which is, the truth is this happens kind of everywhere. Remember, they are under not new management, but new ownership. Tillman Fertitta came in and he paid $2 billion and damn it, he wants a championship. And he didn't come here to invest in the process. The process had already been completed. You don't believe me? This is Tillman Fertitta after Game 6. After Game 6, this isn't a coach. This isn't a GM. This isn't a president. This isn't a player. This is the owner of who owns the Chief. This is who owns the Houston Rockets talking about their offseason.
They came to our home court and they kicked our ass, and that's just the way it is. They outscored us by 10 points in the fourth quarter. They won, they're the champions, and we lost.
Is it any more painful because it's in your backyard?
Hell yeah, it's more painful. You know, this was not fun, and I guarantee you, James and Chris and our team is very upset right now. They kicked our ass in our home court. They beat us by 10 points in the fourth quarter. It's unacceptable, okay? We just have to be better, and I know that we're going to rise to the occasion, and our time's going to come.
Yeah. I mean, Tillman Fertitta, who's won in the restaurant world. His family is won in the MMA world, selling UFC. They've won. Sports is a little bit different, but still the correlations are the same. And he makes a great point. It's like, hey, it wasn't just that we were beaten. We were beaten in the fourth quarter. We were beaten on our home floor. And the part he didn't mention is, oh, yeah, they didn't have two of their five starters. They didn't have their best player. They didn't have their starting center. And they beat us on our own home floor. And, by the way, if you're the Rockets, this is, I believe, the last 4 or 5 years they've lost their last game in the playoffs on their own home floor. It sucks. Right? It's one thing to lose. It's a completely other thing to lose at home. And this keeps happening. And so while you want to preach patience and say, hey, KD could leave, this could be different, Tillman Fertitta essentially has applied the philosophy or theory that I threw out to you before that game. If the Rockets can't beat the Warriors at home in Game 6 without KD, without DeMarcus Cousins, and frankly with a hobbled Andre Iguodala, like when the hell can they beat him? When? And his belief is never. Not as we're currently comprised. Stop doing the same thing. Try something different. And while I don't believe in shopping hungry, and I don't believe in deciding your team's future when you're angry, that dude, he's ticked. He's embarrassed. And we as human beings, we act a little bit irrationally when we get that gut punch. Right? And then I'm sure he was embarrassed by the analytics reffing thing. Guys that run businesses, and this does in some levels relate to Magic Johnson, when they haven't seen failure or don't remember failure, what they don't want is excuses. I don't want you to do analytics and have it released right before the Western Conference Finals or right after Game 1 of the Western Conference Finals that tells me last year why you lost Game 7 at home. I saw it. You missed 27 straight threes. I saw it. Chris Paul was in street clothes. These are excuses. I want results. This is what it's like to work in the real world. You know? I have a real job. If we start losing affiliates and losing sponsors, it doesn't matter how much my bosses like me. I like you, but dude, there's a bottom line business. Every business is a bottom line business. Here's one. There's a push over the last 3 years for the WNBA to pay their players more. You heard that one? I got to pay their players more. It's a bottom line business. They've had to find other owners outside of NBA owners because NBA owners were tired of losing money. They've had to move to smaller arenas. They've had to move to smaller networks. Now it's on CBS Sports Network, some of these games, which are produced in-house and they basically just put them on TV. They've had to do creative ways because it's not a money winner. You'll hear this year, the World Cup, the Women's World Cup, which is a cool event, is on Fox Sports 1. You'll hear people arguing like, why don't the women make as much as the men? Do we know why? Because they don't generate as much money as the men. They will this year in a World Cup year, but compared to the men on any other year, the income pales in comparison, so they make less money. It's a bottom line business. It's a bottom line business. And so I'm sorry if it doesn't make sense to you. Like the Rockets were close last year and they're close this year. Tillman Fertitta comes from the business world. We're like, dude, close. This isn't horseshoes and hand grenades. You either win or you lose. What was that? Remember those No Fear shirts? Whatever happened to No Fear? You guys remember those No Fear shirts? My favorite saying, second place is the first loser. Right? Ricky Bobby, you ain't first, you're last. And that's the philosophy that Tillman Fertitta has. Does that mean I think you make a nonsensical giveaway your best player trade? No. And that is part of that's part of what doesn't get reported in these stories. Could you have Chris Paul? Yeah, you got to give him back something in return. I just say, hand you Chris Paul. But if the Lakers want to give us a bunch of their young pieces, we'll consider it. You want to take that contract off our hands. You always wanted Chris Paul. If the New York Knicks need a point guard and they want to give us some of that cap space or they want to give us that, that draft pick, we'll consider it. We'll make a three-way deal so we can get some more shooters, get some different pieces around. We can get rid of this Clint Capella contract. But I understand. I frankly agree with, because I sat there and said, if you can't beat them tonight, forget about beating them in Oakland. That'd be hard enough. But if you can't beat them tonight when they don't have Durant, they don't have Cousins, and you're on your own home floor and you have a lead in the fourth quarter, when are you going to beat them? And Tillman Fertitta's ticked, and he's like, you know what? We're probably not. Let's fix it. He was probably mad about the analytics crowd releasing their deal. They got rid of the staff of Mike D'Antoni. And now they're probably going to get rid of some of these guys and try something new. We've come a long way from Mike D'Antoni saying, like, yeah, I'd like to coach 3 more years. Now, like, all right, we're going to get you a whole different staff. All right, we're going to fix some of your players. I completely understand what's happening in Houston. In many ways, it mirrored what Magic Johnson wanted to do in L.A., right? Which is like, hey, you've been doing it your way for a while. We got to do it differently. Problem with Magic is you had so many conflicting alliances, his lack of emotional and time investment, and some of the decisions that he made he's never owned up to. And I think Magic's presence, his name, is not as prominent, as well received. It's not like Magic can just show up, smile, and couldn't even get a meeting with Paul George. But Magic's supposedly gave people anxiety. Why did he give them anxiety? Because he wanted to get more out of them. It wasn't enough what they were doing. He wanted to win. Guys that are used to winning don't take the losing very well. Like Tillman Fertitta, like he's like, I don't want the MVP chant pisses me off, I'm sure. MVP, MVP. What has he done in the playoffs? Nothing. Hasn't. Hadn't been in the finals since he was in Oklahoma City, and he no-showed in the finals. All of that would make me even more furious. And when a guy wins in the business world, he expects to win in sports. Doesn't mean that he's realistic. Doesn't mean he's realistic. But owners own, right? You ever heard that expression? In sports, that's what they say all the time. Owners own. Why did you draft that guy? Owners own. Because no matter what you want to do, your analytics department wants to do, your scouting department wants to do, or a coach wants to do, or an assistant GM or a GM wants to do, if the owner picks up the phone and says, no, we're drafting Johnny Manziel. Guess who you're drafting? Do you know why? Because Tillman Fertitta laid out $2 billion for a team. You want to make those decisions? Go get $2 billion of your own money. That's the way it works. That's the conversation you have. Right? So it sounds callous. It sounds terse. It sounds abrupt. It sounds like a tough place to work and a tough place to be successful, right? But he's seen it the last 2 years. And he's probably personally embarrassed. And when you're a successful dude in your hometown and you're personally embarrassed, I want some butts. Right? He wants to chew some butts. Well, who do you want to trade? All of them. Get rid of all of them. I want winners, right? Wasn't that Mike Singletary? Completely understand where this story comes from.